Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 8th part of What If Deku Can't Stop Adopting Kids. Hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 41, MCU Tier List. Hello? Is this on? Kiba asked the camera. It is. Fantastic. Hello, my loyal subjects. Today we're going to try something different. Something different. What could that mean? Please tell us, oh great and mighty Kiba. Today we will be doing a tier list of sorts. Of the Marvel movies Phase 1, 2, and 3. Kiba revealed, showing the audience the list. I wanted to do all the movies, but that would take too much of my time. On Kiba's monitor was a tier list. At the top was the tier royal. Below that was outstanding. Below that was entertaining. Below that was merely fine. Below that was not worth my time. And below that was should be cast into the abyss. And below that was all the Marvel movies from Hulk to Spider-Man Far From Home. Now just seeing my opinion on such films would be more than enough. I've heard that having two people discuss such things is more enlightening and entertaining, Kiba explained. And as such, Fu will also be joining us. Fu appeared on the other screen. With a tier list identical to Kiba's. Hi. Yay, more Fu. And he's not gonna get dismembered this time. Queen Crimson, aw. You don't know that. Imagine Kiba disagrees with him so much she goes over there and rips his head off. I mean, that has happened, Fu commented. But she's become less bratty since then, so we don't have to worry about that. Ye wait, what do you mean less bratty? Kiba shouted in outrage. Anyway, let's start with Hulk, Fu said as he moved on. It's okay. Fu put it in merely fine. It's only interesting when Hulk is on the screen. Which is way too little. Fu critiqued. I agree. Kiba said, putting the movie in the same place. Can we talk about the Hulk for a second? He is horribly wasted as a side character in these movies. You have this huge, amazing rage monster that they rarely use through phases 1 to 3. And it took them far too long to make a sequel. Why? Rights issues. Issues rights. Apparently, it's because of rights issues. Fu pointed out. I guess this is back when Disney didn't own basically everything. Ugh. Stupid stuffy people in suits making things complicated. Kiba huffed. So moving on before Kiba goes on to another rant. Iron Man. Fu continued. Fu proceeded to move Iron Man to entertaining. Iron Man is a great movie. I probably would have put it higher if the villain wasn't dumb. What exactly was Ironmonger's plan? He was gonna take over the company by murdering someone in public in a giant robot suit? Fu summarized. And this is after he's already attacked a bunch of government agents? His plan should just be to go the run at that point. I think you're overrating it, brother. Kiba put Iron Man into the merely fine tier. Its fight scenes are also one-sided except for the last one, which is okay. Stark is fun to watch, I guess. But that's the film that started it all. Kids these days. Are you questioning the great Kiba? You dare. Moving on, Fu said. Iron Man 2. Fu moved Iron Man 2 into merely fine. Meh. Little worse than the first one. This time it has two villains. Hammer is the only one that's any real fun to watch outside of the fight scenes. Fu summarized. Once again, I disagree. Kiba put Iron Man 2 into merely fine. You put it in the same tier. Fu pointed out. Yes. But I think it's a bit better. Kiba said. The fight scenes in this one were less boring. And I like War Machine's armor better than Iron Man's. And Whiplash had really cool whips. Is Kiba only gonna look at the fight scenes and cool stuff? What did you expect her to look at? I'm glad Fu is here. Oh, we're gonna get some hot takes today. Thanks. Anyway, moving on. We have Captain America, the First Avenger. Fu said. Fu then proceeded to put that movie in entertaining. This film is really good, and I really like the World War II thing. We didn't get to see him fight in the war as much, but we saw a lot of things around it. Fu explained. And the captain himself, while he is pretty simple, is fun to root for because he's such a nice guy. It's a simple movie, but a good movie. Kiba meanwhile, slid the movie into merely fine. As Fu said, it's simple. And so are the fight scenes. The shield throwing is cool. And I really like that montage of him fighting in the war. But too much talking, too much romance. And the villain's final fight was kind of dull. Cap is great. The only American we can rely on. Back when America was reliable. Going on to Thor, Fu said. Fu slid Thor right into not worth my time. It has some interesting parts. Some funny parts. But it's pretty boring. It just doesn't feel like much is happening at all. Fu explained. Kiba on the other hand slid that movie into should be cast into the abyss. This movie makes me angry. Kiba shouted. You have a god. An actual god of lightning. And what do you do with him? You take away his powers and have him be lame almost the entire movie. It's so boring I fell asleep. It has one good fight scene. And one okay fight scene. This is a terrible movie. And a terrible disappointment. Damn, she roasted that movie. Stop, it's already dead. Yeah, they really could have done something more fun with Thor. At least they got their act together with Ragnarok. Next is the Avengers. Fu continued. Fu put the first Avengers movie into the entertaining tier. It's like Captain America. Good and simple. Fu summarized. It's really fun to watch all the heroes come together and fight aliens and sometimes each other. I think it's better than Captain America because Loki is a better villain. I disagree, I think it's much better Captain America. Kiba placed the Avengers into the outstanding tier. It's way funnier and has more fights. And better fights too. Watching the Avengers come together to fight an entire army is amazing. The only reason it's not higher is because there are more amazing movies later. It's iconic, alright. Even after all these years. The thing that showed the MCU really worked. I think it's underrated. Next up is the first movie of Phase 2, Iron Man 3, Fu announced. Fu put it in merely fine. It's an okay movie. Pretty fun, I liked the parts where he had to fight people without his suit. The villain was meh. At least they had some okay fights. The fights were fine. I liked those armorless fights as well. And the big fight at the end was the best part. Kiba said, sliding the movie into the same tier. Remember back when people were mad about the Mandarin thing? Dude, that was literally hundreds of years ago. I wish the Iron Man trilogy was better. The next one is Thor, The Dark World. Fu sighed. Kiba, let's not waste time here. Both of them immediately moved it to should be cast into the abyss tier. It's so boring, I'm not even going to waste my breath. Kiba scoffed. Ouch. Sounds about right. Worst Marvel movie ever. Moving from a bad sequel to a good one, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Fu announced. Kiba slid it into Royal immediately. This was fantastic. The boat scene where he fought Batroc. The elevator fight. The bridge fight. And the final fight with the Winter Soldier. All of them were brilliant. Fu slid it up to outstanding. This one was really good. Winter Soldier is a great villain. If I was capable of feeling fear, I probably would have been afraid of him. This is also the movie that made me really like Captain America. He's everything a hero should be. No matter who's in his way, if they're doing something bad, Captain America will fight them, even if he has to fight America. Fu explained. Also, I have a feeling that this is one of those movies I don't fully understand, and when I get older it might get better or worse. What's there to understand? It's about superheroes fighting supervillains. Kiba scoffed. Don't overthink things, brother. Oh, Kiba. Didn't like the first one so much. Second one was amazing. Cap still has one of the best trilogies. Now for the weird one. Guardians of the Galaxy. Fu continued. Fu proceeded to put this film in entertaining. It had some nice music. The characters were likable. And it was very funny. But the villain was boring. And the fight scenes were just okay. Yeah, I wish Groot had better fights in this movie. Kiba slid the movie into merely fine. The only real part one liked was the comedy. The characters were funny enough to keep this interesting. Drax is the best though. Rip Groot. He comes back. Does he? Or is it clone Groot? Apparently, it is some kind of clone or offspring. In my head canon, Groot is still Groot. Fu got ready to continue, but Kiba suddenly jumped in. Age of Ultron is in royal tier. And anyone who wants to say otherwise can fight me. Kiba challenged. Kiba, remember that everyone can have their own opinions, Fu repeated what Izuku had told Kiba countless times. Yes, everyone can have their wrong opinions. Kiba scoffed. I hear all this stuff about how Age of Ultron is the worst Avengers movie, and how people think the first one was better. But Age of Ultron is better in every way. Just the opening fight is better than any fight in the first movie. And Hulk vs. Iron Man is one of the most amazing fights in these three phases. Ultron is a great villain, that's more entertaining than any of the villains before him. It's going in royal. Fu sighed and slid the movie into entertaining. Betrayal. Kiba shouted. I agree with pretty much everything Kiba said, but Quicksilver's death was stupid, Fu explained. Kiba opened her mouth to object, but then she closed it, and thought about it a bit, before crossing her arms together and pouting. Fine. I'll accept it. But I'm keeping it in royal. Well, it did have some good fights. Ultron was nothing like he was in the comics. Who cares, lol. I was just really disappointed they didn't do much with Quicksilver. Alright, before Kiba starts breaking things, let's move on to Ant-Man, Fu said. Kiba once again took the lead here and put the movie into royal. Ant-Man is one of the best Avengers. Kiba stated. He's just a really nice guy, trying to be a good dad. And the fights in this movie were a lot better than I thought they would be. The shrinking was a lot cooler than I expected it to be. And it only gets better in the future. Fu nodded as he slid it into outstanding. I don't think people understand how great it is to have a loving dad until their own parents abandon them. Ant-Man is my favorite Avenger as well. He's funny, smart, his powers are interesting, and he's a great dad. Hank Pym is also a good character. He's still trying to be a good dad, but he's not as good at it as Scott. The only thing that makes this movie less good is Yellow Jacket. He's not really a good villain until the end of the movie when he puts on the suit. Man, this one was personal for them, huh? Never really thought of it that way. Scott's great. His powers don't make any sense though. Neither do ours. Now, for the last Steve Rogers Captain American film, Captain America Civil War, Fu announced. Fu promptly put the movie into outstanding. This movie is great. Looking back, I can see how things led up to this. Steve and Tony were kinda always opposites to each other. And when superheroes have different opinions to one another, there is only one thing they can do. Fu said. They fight. Kiba shouted as she put it into royal. So much fighting. And with all the Avengers. Except Hulk and Thor, which is a shame, but that airport battle was one of the best fights in the 3 phases. The only reason I didn't put it higher is because Zemo's plan is a little confusing, and Vision wasn't really used as much as he should have been, Fu explained. Pa! Who cares? It's an amazing action-filled movie from beginning to end. Kiba stated. And that's all I care about. Yeah, Vision wasn't done justice for a while. Wish Hulk and Thor were in it. Airport scene alone puts it in outstanding. Spider-Man. You didn't mention Spider-Man. They'll get to him. Now for Doctor Strange. Fu continued. Fu slid the movie into merely fine. It's a weird movie, Fu admitted. But looking past that, it's pretty much just like the Iron Man movie, but with magic. And the same uninteresting villain. Or villains, I guess. Kiba seemed conflicted. This movie is truly strange. Its fights are interesting. And the way the Doctor defeats such a powerful entity is truly creative. Everything is just strange. For perplexing me, and keeping from being bored, I will put it into entertaining. It's Iron Man. On drugs. It really is. At least the magic looks cool. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Fu said. Kiba put the movie into outstanding. By far an improvement to the first one. Funnier than the last one by far. And all the amazing colors and backgrounds, it really makes me feel as if I've left Earth behind. And the fight scenes, while there are less of them than I like, are more creative and amusing to watch. Kiba said, and I cannot express how much joy I had watching Ego meet his end. Yeah, as it turns out, watching a bad parent get what he deserves is satisfying for us. Who knew? Fu said sarcastically, as he moved the move into outstanding. As Kiba says, the background, coloring, and designs make the most of the space thing. And I really like it. And I felt something for Star-Lord. My dad didn't kill my mom, but I can know what it's like to realize that your parents is a terrible person. That one hit me. Can we find Fu's parents? And see if they are also unkillable? Why don't we just find all their parents and do that? Stan Gamora. Read the room, dude. Moving on. We have the first Spider-Man movie. Spider-Man Homecoming. Fu continued. Fu and Kiba both put it into merely fine. It's passable. I feel like there could have been more cool web-slinging scenes. And definitely some cooler fights. Kiba commented. Spider-Man feels like another character that is not as powerful as he should be. Shiroku is half his age and I've seen her fight in more impressive ways than he does. And she doesn't even have spider sense. I just really don't get teenagers. Fu shrugged. The villain is good. Though. But isn't he just an evil Falcon? Who Spider-Man already fought and almost beat? I feel like he shouldn't have been that hard for Spider-Man to beat. And I know he was using surprise attacks, but he has a spider sense, surprise attacks shouldn't work. There's nothing really wrong with the movie, it's just fine. But it gave us the best live-action Spider-Man. Yeah, the spider sense didn't really seem to work for a while, for no reason. They made the Vulture actually threatening. It deserves an outstanding for that alone. Fu didn't even try to announce the next one. As he knew what was coming. And the next one was Thor Ragnarok. Kiba shouted with pure excitement. Kiba then put that movie in the royal tier so fast she almost broke her mouse. This movie is the best movie out of all of these movies. Kiba said with a tone that left no room for argument. You said movie times. Fu pointed out. I don't care. This is what a movie about a thunder god should be like. Constantly keeping me entertained with either hilarious shenanigans or amazing fights where the main weapons are lightning and fist. And this is one of Hulk's best showings. And Valkyrie is the best female character in these movies, I don't care if she's a drunk. She is awesome and can take down spaceships with her bare hands. Loki is the best he's ever been, and the Get Help part reminded me of something I'd do with Fu. Hela is one of the best villains ever. That part where she takes down the entire Asgardian army. After that, I asked Dad if I could use throwing swords, but he said that it was too dangerous, which I think is untrue. But then Dad had me throw a pencil and I may have accidentally impaled Fu with it, which was just bad luck, but Dad didn't believe me and said no. Anyway, those scenes that looked like moving paintings were some of the best parts, and my favorite was when Thor descended from the sky like the god he is, cloaked in lightning and death, ready to take on an army of the dead. And Kiba was about to continue, but Fu cut her off. "Kiba, you getting Dad's muttering habit," Fu informed her. And? Kiba raised an eyebrow. "Caretaker is one of the greatest people to walk this earth. I fail to see how picking up habits from him could be a bad thing. And these people should feel honored to hear my voice, so I doubt they'll complain. It's true. We won't. It's so cute." She called him Dad instead of caretaker. Alright, well, I really like this movie too. Kiba basically said everything that can really be said here. So, let's move on. Fu said as he put Thor Ragnarok into Royal. So now we have Black Panther. Kiba moved the movie into Outstanding. This movie was very entertaining. It starts off with Black Panther striking fear into the hearts of criminals. Black Panther is incredibly striking throughout the movie, and he's not the only one. It's as if being Wakandan instantly makes you a fierce fighter. And Wakanda itself is still one of the most interesting places in the MCU. Killmonger is a worthy opponent, however, and their conflict makes for a very amusing spectacle. Also, war rhinos. Those were an excellent touch. Wakanda forever, Fu said, as he slid the movie into Outstanding. Wakanda forever. Wakanda forever. Wakanda forever. Wakanda forever. Continuing the streak of excellence, Avengers Infinity War. Kiba introduced. Kiba quickly put the movie into Royal. The only movie out of all of these that could even compete with Thor Ragnarok. A movie worthy of its epic title, as it has battles spanning across the universe, featuring almost every hero in the MCU at this point. Except for Ant-Man, unfortunately. And Hawkeye. But aside from those two, everyone else gets amazing fights and action, except for the Hulk. Kiba sighed in annoyance. Once again, they do injustice towards the Hulk. He has one fight, which he definitely should have won, but didn't, and then we don't see him for the rest of the film. Kiba reviewed. Thanos is a truly fearsome foe, and with his Infinity Gauntlet, he managed to outmatch the heroes. Even if only temporarily. Which was quite surprising. Overall, a very excellent film with a few small disappointments. While it is disappointing that Ant-Man doesn't appear, and Hawkeye too. Overall, it is a very good movie. A sad one too. I almost felt something when Gamora, Loki, and Vision died. Not when the snap happened, because I already knew they would come back. But it was shocking to see the villain win in a movie. Fu said he put the movie into Royal. What do you expect? He is inevitable. This does put a smile on my face. Reality is often disappointing. But not this time. Perfectly balanced. As all things should be. Insert Infinity War meme here. Now we move on to yet another excellent movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Kiba said eagerly. As one might predict by her tone, Kiba put the movie right into Royal. Ant-Man continues being my favorite Avenger. Reminding much of Caretaker in some moments. And the action here far surpasses the first film. Wasp rivals Valkyrie for my favorite female character, however, she can be a bit of a stick in the mud at times. Ghost was an interesting antagonist. I like how different her powers were from our heroes. And I still do love those three morons that follow Ant-Man around. Their jests amuse me. And the ending was extremely satisfying. Kiba said. Until it wasn't. Fu pointed out. But ignoring that, I can agree with what Kiba says. I'm not a fan of that one guy Sonny, something I think. He was only here to give punching bags for everyone. But other than that it's a great movie. Fu slid it into Royal. Scott Lang for life. Wasp for life. Meh. Underrated. Now on to, wait, did we forget to watch Captain Marvel? Fu asked as he looked at the next movie. What are you, oh? Kiba looked at what Fu was talking about and saw that they had in fact missed Captain Marvel. So that's why her appearance in Endgame seemed weird. Fu deadpanned. Well, this is unfortunate. Oh well, moving on. Kiba sighed. On to Avengers Endgame. Neither Fu nor Kiba actually placed it immediately. Rather it looked like they took time to try and figure out where it should go. This movie for most of it was only nearly fine, until the last parts which make me want to put it in Royal. Kiba commented as she made an I'm thinking face. I thought it was an interesting for a while. But I agree the final battle may have brought it up to Royal. Fu said. So actually I'm just going to make things similar and just put it in Royal. Agreed, Kiba said as she also placed that movie in the top tier. Captain America using Mjolnir makes up for half of the talking scenes. And the Avengers Assemble moment made up for the rest of them. And the rest of that battle made up for what they did to Hulk, ugh. Overall the good far outweighs the bad. The part where Captain America faces against Thanos' army, with that one shot that makes it completely hopeless, but he still gets up to fight anyway. Fu described. And the endings for both Iron Man and Captain America would be very heartwarming if I could properly feel emotions. As someone who can properly feel emotions, I can confirm that Captain America's ending was very emotionally satisfying. He fought for the universe and now he can finally be happy. Iron Man should have got the same ending, but no. He died instead. Kiba crossed her arms and pouted. His poor daughter now doesn't have a father. That poor little girl. At least she still has one living parent, one more than we had when our parents snapped. Fu quipped. Kiba gagged. Fu, that was both terrible and in poor taste. Where on earth did you get that? K? I take that as an insult, Fu said in his monotone. And since you want to go there. When Iron Man died, Kiba started crying and saying no, don't you dare. You have a daughter to go home to. You can't die. And Dad had to comfort her for the fun dash. Fu didn't get any further as in the time it took him to say all that, Kiba had run over to him and ripped his head off, causing a fountain of blood to spray from his neck stump until Kiba kicked his body off the chair and out of the sight of the camera. Welp. Never mind. She almost did it. She almost made it. It was so close. Poor Fu. Queen Crimson, nice. There were a few seconds of silence as Kiba made her way back to her chair. The only noise was the gushing of Fu's blood off-screen. Eventually, Kiba got back on camera and settled back down. My apologies, it appears a villain broke into our house and ripped my brother's head off. I took care of that, so don't worry. And also please ignore the obvious lies my brother was spewing beforehand. Anyway, Spider-Man Far From Home. Great movie. Didn't like teen romance. Better action than the first one. And the villains were amazing. This movie goes into outstanding. Anyway, remember the Q&A is tomorrow, don't miss it, bye. And with that Kiba promptly ended the stream. Chapter 42, Q&A Part 1. It was about the time. The stream had already started, however, the camera wasn't turned on. And so the viewers waited anxiously for their queen to arrive. And then, the real show started. Greetings my faithful servants. Kiba introduced. The camera layout was different from her normal one. This time it was more panned out, and farther away, although the reason for this was obvious as instead of just showing Kiba and perhaps one other person, this time there were 9. Izuku, Kiba, Fu, Sansan, Yonda, Shiruku, Kei, Otoko and Netsu were all sitting at one of the big tables in the cafeteria. Izuku having a computer in front of him, showing that he was the one setting up and controlling the stream. Izuku was also wearing a green and purple cloak. One that he had Shiroku make for him, that allowed him to hide his face. Oh my god, it's the whole family. Wait, it's not the whole family, there are a few missing. Where is Kai? Who cares? So many cute kids. Who is that guy in the cloak? A servant? Maybe an older brother? Maybe he's the mysterious caretaker? Nah, he looks too young. Maybe he's just short. You think caretaker is that big guy in the cloak? The guy that looks like he's made of moss? I don't know. Why is one of them on fire? Why wouldn't one of them be on fire? As you all know, today is the family Q&A I have been preparing for quite some time. Kiba announced, before motioning out towards her family. As such, I have gathered as much as my family as I could. Unfortunately, some are rather averse to the camera, and will not be joining us. But I did manage to finally convince Caretaker to show himself. Kiba pointed at Izuku. My servants, this man is Caretaker. The one who made all of this possible. Feel grateful for his time. It is precious after all. Wait, that is Caretaker. He's so small. He looks like a teenager. I can't see his face. Not what I was expecting. Big things come in small packages. I'm going to assume you didn't mean that in the perverted sense. Alien Queen, hey guys. It's me, Mina. Can't wait for the questions. Hey. Izuku timidly introduced himself. Thank you all for watching Kiba's streams. She takes a lot of pride in her viewership. And yeah, I am a bit young. Caretaker's age doesn't really matter. So let's not waste time discussing it. Kiba dismissed. Now to introduce you to my siblings. Kiba motioned towards Fu, Sanson, and Shiroku. You all should already be familiar with these three. My right hand Fu and Kyosei. My arch-rival Sanson, and my other rival Shiroku. Please stop calling me that. Shiroku sighed in annoyance. Just because I'm strong doesn't mean I want to fight. It wasn't that Shiroku was averse to fighting. She would if she felt like it. But because of her strength, Kiba viewed her as a rival. And would challenge her to contests and fights, far more often than she cared for. Noted and ignored. Now allow me to introduce those who you all may be less familiar. Kiba announced. Hi. I'm Keseki. But don't call me that. Call me K. Don't make that, me snake. K giggled. Everyone but Izuku and Netsu proceeded to groan at her terrible joke. Even Otoko. And while Izuku was holding in a groan, Netsu was giggling a bit. Ha! Me snake. Oh god no. Oh no, she puns. Why have I been hurt in such a way? It wasn't that bad. Yes, it was. Her snakes are so cute. Oh. My turn. I'm Netsu. My quirk is flame dominance. It lets me control fire. And I'm gonna be the #1 hero. Netsu said with enthusiasm. Ah, it's like a little Endeavor. But happy. If he's happy then he's not like Endeavor. Sorry, little one, but that position belongs to Lady Kiba. Ha! We'll see about that. Kiba smirked at Netsu, who smirked back. You two, behave, Izuku told the two of them, causing them to settle back down. Oh man, Daddy stepped in. I still can't believe he's their dad. Alien Queen, me neither. Froppy, it's pretty hard to believe. Why yeah. Izuku sighed, before looking over to Yanda and Otoko. Kiba, shouldn't you introduce them? Oh, right. Thank you, Caretaker. Kiba quickly cleared her throat. Those two are Yanda and Otoko. They're mute, kind of. Otoko is fully mute, but Yonda can speak telepathically. Unfortunately, you can't hear it over a camera, so Caretaker will be telling you what she's saying. And since Otoko can't speak, Yonda will use her mind-reading ability to speak for him, which Caretaker will then say out loud. Wow, sounds complicated. Does that boy even have a mouth? That thing is a kid. He's so tall. What a cute girl. Now it's time to introduce the last person who will be joining us. Kiba said Caretaker. Izuku nodded and started pressing a few keys on the computer. Then, in the corner of the screen, another screen popped up, showing a camera feed of Kai in his room. Kai, you're on, Izuku said into the laptop's microphone. I am. Hello everyone. Kai greeted. Kai. Kai. He is here. I guess he would have been a bit too big to be with everyone else. Big boy. Biggest boy. Kai was a bit too big to be with us, so Caretaker came up with this idea, Kiba explained. Once again, remember to give him your thanks. There's really no need. Izuku blushed under his hood. Thank you, Caretaker. Thank O great Caretaker for delivering this unto us. Red Riot, thanks, bro. Alien Queen, thanks Midori. Uravati, yes there is a need. Izuku blushed even more and hid his face even more. Now. This has gone on long enough. Let us move on to the questions. Kiba announced impatiently. Now, naturally I will not be able to answer all your questions. Caretaker will be selecting them, so please try to gain his attention if you'd like your question to be answered. Now. Begin. Immediately after Kiba said that, questions started flooding in, and Izuku was having a hard time keeping up with everything. Alright, let's start with this. What are all of your quirks? Izuku asked. A simple question to start with. My quirk is blood boost. When the life juice of my victims flows through my fangs, my body regains its true power and allows me to dash. Kiba got cut off. Blood boost allows her to enhance her strength, speed, and toughness whenever she consumes blood. The more she exerts herself, the faster her blood reserves drain. If she doesn't drink enough blood, she dies. Fu explained, much to Kiba's annoyance. Wait, she just dies? I would gladly give all my blood to Lady Kiba. Same. Alien Queen, same. Invisible Girl, same. Can I just give like a quarter of my blood? No. All your blood. Hey. Kiba protested. Kiba, we have a lot of questions, so try to answer these as quickly as possible, Izuku told her. Kiba folded her arms and pouted. Fine. My quirk lets me regenerate from any injury, so long as I've eaten enough meat. If I'm low on meat, then I'll go into a zombie-like rampage and try to eat any meat I see. Fu explained. Including human meat. Oh wow, he really is a zombie. Oh, so that's why he's dangerous. At first, I didn't think a regeneration quirk was all that problematic, but the problem isn't the regeneration, it's the eating people part. Wait, does that mean Fu could die if he doesn't eat enough? My quirk also makes me immune to a lot of things like poisons and most mental quirks. Fu continued. And it makes me immune to pain and feelings, kind of. I can taste anything either. Which sucks. 'Cause food is great. Netsu added. Oh. My quirk lets me control fire. But it's like, really, really strong. So it's hard to control. Which is why I'm on fire. Because I can't turn it off. Wait, so he's always on fire? Kinda basic. Simple but effective. Shoto Todoroki, trust me. He's plenty powerful. My quirk makes my body acid. Sanson jumped in. Like an upgraded sludge villain. Goodness, she is overpowered. Can't even hit her. Poor Kiba. My turn. My quirk turns people to stone when they look at my eyes. Kay eagerly explained. And it gives me snakes for hair. I don't know why. But I love them. Too bright. Too pure. Sunshine Snake Child. So that's why she's wearing that thing on her face. Would that work through screens? I don't think so. No. Kay's quirk doesn't work through screens, Izuku explained. He thought people might be afraid of being turned to stone, so he decided to put those fears to rest before it started hurting the viewership. Kai, why don't you go next? Okay, Dad. My quirk makes me, me. Kai explains simply. Well, that was quick. To be fair, it's pretty easy to figure out what his quirk is. Don't forget about the poison blood. Fu reminded him. Oh right. My blood is poison. Kai had honestly forgotten about that part. Wait, what? Like the actual Hydra? I'll go next. My quirk is Spider Queen. It gives me all the abilities of a spider, and it lets me command spiders. Shiruku explained, allowing a spider to crawl up her arm to demonstrate. She really is Muffet. Insert spider dance. Spider Girl. The last two are Otoko and Yanda, Izuku explained on their behalf. Otoko's quirk, on top of mutating him to look the way he does, also makes it so that way if you touch him while feeling any significant amount of fear, you will combust into flames. Oh. That explains why he looks like that. Now that all makes sense. And Yanda's quirk basically replaces all her auditory sense with telepathic abilities. Izuku continued. Instead of speaking, she can communicate with people telepathically. And instead of hearing people's voices, she can hear their thoughts. Oh, so there is no privacy around her. So she's kinda deaf, but not really? Secrets be gone. Relationships are gonna be hard for her in the future. That last comment got Izuku thinking. Oh my god, it will be hard for her to sustain a relationship in the future. Well, I guess I just have to hope that all works out. Caretaker. Kiba shouted, snapping Izuku out of his thoughts. Please move on to the next question. Sorry. Izuku apologized, before quickly looking through the chat for more questions. Alright, so, Kay, what is your favorite hairstyle? Snake style? Kay frowned for a moment. Just this. I can't have a snake style because forcing my snakes to stay still in a style for so long hurts them. Don't despair, sister, you only need the one hairstyle to look beautiful, Kiba told her while petting one of her snakes. Ah. Wholesome queen. Wholesome queens. Press X to stan. X. 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 Izuku smiled and made a note to praise Kiba for this later before he dived back into the chat for questions. Okay, Shiruku, is it true you make clothes for everyone in the house, and that you make them out of your silk? Yes. Shiruku answered proudly, before thinking about it for a moment and frowning. Well, not everyone. Sansen refuses to wear clothing, and I haven't met Fukanoko, so I can't make clothing for her. I also can't make clothing for Netsu, because he's always on fire. I can't make Kaiosei clothes either because he's inside Fu. I say making clothes for me counts as making it for both of us, Fu added. Okay then. The only people I haven't made clothes for are Sansen, Netsu, Fukanoko, and Kai. But I'm working on making Kai something. Shiruku continued. Oh. What is it? Kai asked, shaking his head in excitement. You'll have to wait and see, Shiruku said, crossing her arms with a very satisfied smile on her face. Is it a scarf? How much silk would that take? All their clothes come from her butt. Can Kai wear pants? A neck sock. Izuku looked, once more, for a new question. Netsu. Since you're always on fire, do you ever take a bath? Is the only time you're not on fire is when you're fully submerged in water? Nope. Whenever I go into water it all just turns to steam. Netsu explained. But I don't need to take a bath, because I'm always on fire, no germs can get on me. Still is kinda gross, Shiruku muttered. Probably always smells like fire. Toasty. Germs getting fired. Okay, next one. Oh my queen of darkness, I must ask, will you still stream for us lowly peons while still being a pro hero? Izuku repeated one of the questions. Oof. Of course. Did you think I would continue doing this if I didn't find it amusing? Kiba asked haughtily. I do this for my amusement, not yours. So of course I'll be continuing this for quite some time. So long as you all continue to entertain me. Of course, Lady Kiba. We live to serve you. Thank you, Lady Kiba. Hail Lady Kiba. And long may she stream. Hail. 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 Izuku smiled at how excited the chat got. All of them were eager to watch his daughter's antics. All of them loved her. He was so glad that she could finally get the affection she deserved. There were, of course, a few detractors. But he quickly blocked them before the kids ever got to see them. Alright, this one is for Yanda. I know this may seem dumb since you can read minds, but do you know sign language? I know it's redundant, but I'm just curious. Izuku read. Yanda shook her head. There were a few moments of silence as Yanda's mouth moved, but nothing came out. The viewers realized that she was giving a response, they just couldn't hear it. Yanda says that it's pointless to learn sign language, Izuku explained. Yeah, does seem like a lot of work to do something she could ultimately do with her quirk. Not everyone even knows sign language. She doesn't even need to use it to talk to other deaf people. Okay, new question for Sanson. How do you feel about being Kiba's rival? And have you ever lost to Kiba? Izuku asked. Sanson looked at Kiba and smirked. The wop. Never. Kiba's strong. She's a good rival. And she's hard to fight. But she can't hurt Sanson. So I always win. Humph. Kiba pouted and looked away from Sanson's smug look. Her quirk acts as a counter to mine, that's all. One day I will overcome this obstacle and triumph over her. Mark my words. Sanson just continued to look smug. One day, my lady. One day. I really don't see how someone with a quirk that lets them punch really hard beat a person who is immune to punching. All she has to do is be as strong as All Might and do what he did to the sludge villain. You can do it, Lady Kiba. Red Riot, yes she can. Trust me, she hits hard. Dark Shadow can affirm. She hits like a truck. No, 20 trucks. Tsukuyami, she still has a long way to go before she gets that strong. Okay, next question. Izuku searched for a new question. Kai, do you ever go on casual flights around the area for fun, or does caretaker not let you do that because it could cause a panic? Dad, let's fly. I even have this special thing that opens up my roof and lets me fly out. Kai explained enthusiastically. I can only fly around the forest, but it's fine. It's still fun. I take my brothers and sisters with me sometimes. Yeah, flying around with Kai is a blast. Netsu spoke up, pumping his fist to show his excitement. He's a bit slow sometimes, but he's so big that it's kind of fun to fly around him and between his heads. Although you do crash into him a lot. Kiba pointed out smugly. I also like to fly with them on my manticore. We're thinking of making some special games we can play in the sky together. Quidditch. Imagine just being able to casually say have a manticore. Imagine just casually being able to go flying. God, I wish I could do that. Uravity, one day. One day I'll be able to fly. Okay, next one is about Otoko. Otoko, is your size difficult to deal with sometimes, and how do you feel about being so much taller than everyone else except Kai? Izuku asked. There was a bit of silence as Otoko had to think out his answer, and then Yanda had to say it with her telepathic ability. Okay, so Otoko says that it's weird. It's weird to see people so short and think that they're the same age or older than him. It's actually the same with Kai. Seeing something so big and knowing that it's close to his age is kinda freaky. Izuku explained. I know, right? When I look at Kai, I think he's some ancient monster. But he's just like us. Netsu said. It is kinda weird. But everything in this house is weird. Fu shrugged. Being abnormal simply means you're better than normal, Kiba stated proudly. That is, a positive way to look at it, Izuku said. Truth. Alien Queen, yeah. That's the way, Lady Kiba. She has blessed us with such wise words. She truly is a queen. Invisible girl, I love you, Kiba. Froppy, honestly not a bad way of thinking. Okay, next question. Caretaker, do you have a favorite child? If not, who is the easiest to take care of? Izuku read out the question. Well, I don't have a favorite child. I love all of them equally, regardless of how much trouble they can cause at times. All the children then proceeded to look directly at Kiba when he said that. Kiba squinted at them with suspicion. Are you all trying to imply that I am the most difficult to care for? Yes. Said all the kids, including Yanda, although the viewers couldn't hear it. No one here has broken as many things in this house as you, Shiruku told her. Not even that time me and Sanson destroyed some entire rooms. And if Fu weren't Fu, you would have killed him a long time ago. That's not even mentioning that out of everyone, despite your quirk, you somehow managed to hurt yourself more than anyone else, Fu added. Well, it's not my fault. My power is just so immense that sometimes I can't control it, and things like that happen. Kiba defended herself. All the kids gave her looks that showed they weren't buying it, and so Izuku decided to step in. I haven't really thought of who is easiest to take care of, Izuku said out loud. I'd have to say, Yami. Most of the others can occasionally cause issues with their quirks, but he's actually been nothing but helpful. What about Eri? Kei asked with a cute head tilt. Well, I love Eri, but Izuku knew Eri was watching. And so he didn't want to say, she could accidentally kill me if I'm not careful while helping her train her quirk. Her quirk can be somewhat difficult to handle at times. Yeah, I guess the kid who can make an army for you would be the most inherently useful. You think? Imagine having a demon wolf help carry your bags. Kiba's worth the trouble. Alien Queen, hard agree. Invisible Girl, hard agree. Alright. Izuku dived back into the chat. Next question. Chapter 43, Q&A Part 2. Alright, next question. Izuku moved on. As Izuku looked through the chat, there were a couple questions that kept popping up. Such as people asking about his age and about his own quirk. These questions he didn't have any intention of answering. However, one question he wasn't sure about that kept popping up was this. What were your lives like before getting adopted? This was a very loaded question. However, what kept Izuku from dismissing it outright was the fact that kids like Eri and Kyoko weren't present. Most of the kids here had pretty much accepted their pasts and were willing to move past them. With the exception of Yanda, but he could always just not have her answer. Caretaker. Kiba once again snapped Izuku back into reality. You froze again. Oh right, sorry. Izuku quickly apologized, before looking back at the chat to see the question kept popping up. He took a few more seconds to decide whether or not to ask it, and in the end, he thought that leaving it to the children was the best way to go about it. So you kids don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but, what were your lives like before I adopted you? That question had varying reactions. Kai, Shiruku, Otoko, and Netsu didn't have any notable reactions. If anything, they seemed a little confused as to why anyone would want to know about that. Kiba also seemed confused, and a little upset and uncomfortable. But not overly so. Fu kept his typical deadpan expression. To be expected. Sanson, for just a second, actually froze, before she started moving again, and even then she looked a bit less ecstatic. Kei seemed unaffected. About what Izuku expected from her. Yonda, on the other hand, was just sad. The look of sadness on her face made Izuku regret asking it almost immediately. Why do I have the feeling they have a range of backstories that go from bad to worse? I feel bad for asking. Alf. Like I said, none of you have to answer if you don't want to. Izuku reiterated. I'll answer, Kei spoke up, before looking at the camera. I don't remember much of my life before my quirk, but I think it was good. But after I got my quirk, the people taking care of me didn't want me anymore, because my quirk was a problem. So they threw me out of the house and told me to never come back. Fucking shitty parents. God damn it, I hate people sometimes. Oh, this is taking a dark turn. We asked for it. Red Riot, not manly. If you have a kid, then you have to take responsibility. You can't just kick him out when things get hard. And if you are gonna give them up, give them to an orphanage or something. Don't just leave them out on the streets. After that, I lived on the streets for a while. I can't control my quirk, so a bunch of accidents kept happening and I turned people to stone when I didn't mean to. Kei continued in a somber tone. And people kept calling me a monster, and said that I was hideous, and they said lots of mean things. People are the worst. How is it that kids like this always end up surrounded by terrible people? Dust to dust, because there is an abundance of terrible people. Why didn't the heroes help? Queen Crimson, what a silly question. Heroes don't help with things like this. Silly. Bloodcoital, yeah. Doesn't give them any glory. And then after that, a bad man found me. And kidnapped me. Kei revealed. You could now see a bit of the pain on her face, as she relieved some bad memories, although she still seemed mostly okay considering what she was talking about. He kept me locked in a cage with a blindfold on, and took me out so he could steal from places. He would make me use my quirk to turn everyone to stone, and if I tried to close my eyes he would hit me until I opened them. What the fuck? I'm gonna be sick. Oh, Kei. Alien Queen, I think I want to vomit. That is disgusting. Invisible Girl, that's low even for a villain. Uravity, Kei, you poor sweet girl. I'm so sorry. But, then everything got better. Because one day, Dad took him down and rescued me. Kei's expression brightened up significantly, and she smiled brightly at the camera. Dad knocked him out, stone cold, and went to untie me, but he accidentally looked at my eyes and turned to stone. Sorry, Dad. Izuku smiled and walked over to her, giving her a quirk hug to reassure her. It's fine. It wasn't your fault. None of that was. You didn't choose your quirk. Kei's smile widened even further, and she hugged her father back. Aw. Alien Queen, aw. Invisible Girl, aw. Queen Crimson, aw. Izuku returned to his seat, and Kei continued her story. When he went back to normal, he adopted me. Which was the best day ever. I got a new dad. I got a new little sister. I got to live in a house again and I didn't need to eat garbage anymore. It's so bittersweet to see how happy she is when she says she didn't need to eat garbage anymore. Good on you, caretaker. Shoto Todoroki, good job, Midoriya. This world needs more good parents. Red Riot, he saved her himself and took her in even after she turned him to stone. Now that's manly. Bloodcurdle, that's what a true hero does. That's such a sad story. So glad it had a happy ending. Creati, I still struggled with the fact that a parent actually condemned a child to such a fate. Alien Queen, we stand Dadariya. Especially Uravity. Uravity, Nina. Invisible Girl, Stan. 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 Poor girl. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. Well, on the bright side, she seems to be doing okay now. Kay was ready to let her other siblings tell their stories, but when she looked around she saw that her story had a serious effect on her siblings. Fu's expression was mostly neutral, but there was a bit of anger in his eyes. Just a bit. But even that was a lot for someone like Fu. Kiba and Netsa looked furious. Like they wanted to hunt down and destroy the people who gave their sister such a hard time. Kai, Yanda, and Shiruku were actually crying. Sansan and Otoko, well, it was hard to tell what they were feeling just looking at their expression, but they certainly didn't seem happy. Things were bad, but they're not bad anymore. I have a great family now with lots of brothers and sisters. And they're all really nice. Kay said happily, looking around at her siblings with a huge smile on her face. Trying to reassure her siblings. So I don't really care about all that bad stuff anymore. Because now I'm happy and everything's going to be fine. Because you guys rock. Such a precious ball of sunshine. Protect. I will guard that smile with my life. Alien Queen, I will fight for that smile. Invisible Girl, I will kill for that smile. Queen Crimson, ditto. As Kay was winding down after finishing her story, she was suddenly hugged by Shiruku. Thankfully she was gentle. I'm so sorry that happened to you, Shiruku told her, some tears rolling down her face. I swear I will be the best sister I can be. So you'll never be that sad again. Yeah, and if any villain wants to try and touch you, they have to go through me. Netsa said, making a fireball rise above his hand. Of course I will protect my family with all my might, so if anyone would like to call you a monster or lay a hand on you again, I will personally rip their heads from their shoulders, Kiba promised. You don't need to do all that. Kay smiled and blushed. Murdering someone would make everything Dad's doing go up in flames. There were some groans from most of the kids, but Netsu and even Kai laughed a bit. I think you're funny, sister, Kai admitted. I don't, but for some reason, I'm laughing as I'm crying. Same, man. Same. Makes me almost want to adopt, almost. As someone who has adopted children, this warms my heart. Don't get all cheery yet, that was just one of their backstories. Fuck. Well, if we are sharing our backstories, then I guess I'll go next. Shiruko stepped up after wiping her face clean. Mine is not very interesting. I was born with my quirk, so I always looked like this. My parents gave me up at birth and handed me over to DOC, and I was raised there for most of my life. It was fine, I guess. I didn't go hungry or have to eat garbage or anything. I had a comfy bed and a TV, and they even gave me some stuff to make clothes. But it's a lot better here. I was so alone back there. And I could never go outside. And sometimes, I would hear the people talking about me. About how ugly I was and about how they hated taking care of me. Now I have a daddy who loves me and a family that cares, and actually wears the clothes I make. Okay, not nearly as bad. Still, pretty bad. Poor Spider Girl. She had a bunch of material stuff, but was given no love. I'm so glad she's in a better place now. Creati, none of this feels right. I was raised by DOC too. Kai spoke up, looking a bit sheepish. They didn't like me very much. They yelled at me a lot. They said I was such a hassle and that I should try to make their jobs easier. I didn't have a TV or anything, so I just sat around and napped a lot. It was very boring. And lonely. What shitty government agents. I know taking care of someone of that size would be hard, but that's just fucked up to talk to a kid like that. Disgusting. Uravati, and Kai is such a sweetheart too. How could anyone talk to him like that? I was taken by DOC too. Netsu was the next to speak. But I wasn't raised there. My parents gave me up because I kept setting everything on fire by accident. I was kept in a room and they didn't let me go outside, and I couldn't fly around a lot. It was sucky. Okay, so far. The least tragic backstory. Man, I'm so glad Dadari is getting those kids out of there. Being lonely fucking sucks. Daddy. Izuku turned his head to Yonda as she heard her speaking out to him. Yes, dear? He responded. Otoko says that his backstory was like Shiroku's, where he was lonely. And the people taking care of him hated looking at him. Yonda repeated what she was told. It was very boring, and he's glad to be here instead of there. Otoko nodded to affirm what she said was true. The other children gave him sympathetic looks, and Sansan actually moved over to him and wrapped around his body, to hug and comfort him. As Izuku spoke what Yonda told him to the camera, Fu turned to Kiba. I think I should tell our story. What? Kiba glared at her brother. Why shouldn't I be the one to tell it? I am an amazing storyteller. Because you're overdramatic, Fu explained. Knowing you'll go on for hours about a small detail, and over-exaggerate things. By the time you finish talking, the Q&A would end. And the others wouldn't even get to speak. You've already spoken more than everyone else here combined, and you're gonna speak more after, so just let me do this. Kiba pouted heavily and crossed her arms. Oof. Fu sighed. Please, grant me this honor, Lady Kiba, Queen of Eternal Darkness. Kiba's pout lessened, but she still didn't look particularly pleased. Fine. Thank you, Fu told her. Alright, does anyone else want to share? Izuku had just finished talking about Otoko's origin and was ready to move on. I'll go, Fu said before looking at the camera. Since me and Kiba were together for most of it, I'll be telling both of ours, but Kiba's definitely gonna chime in at some points. Of course, Kiba said with much self-assurance. Well, we've already said that our birth parents didn't want us because of our quirks. Fu reiterated. But after that, we were on the streets. And we weren't doing too well since Kiba needs blood to live and I need meat. We had to steal and attack people just to survive. She would never kill anyone, but Kiba needed their blood. Wait. Lady Kiba attacked people. She had to survive. Queen Crimson, you gotta do what you gotta do. Alien Queen, Lady Kiba, is completely innocent. If she didn't get blood, she would have died. If anything, we should blame the crappy parents again. Invisible Girl, yeah. The parents are the problem. Uravity, Kiba didn't choose her quirk. She didn't have a choice. Creati, it is squarely the parents' responsibility to care for their children's needs. If they made the choice to abandon that responsibility and the child had to seek out other means of sustaining themselves, then any harm done by that child should be blamed on the parents. If they wanted to give up Kiba, then they should have given her to the DOC. Granted, it has become apparent that the DOC are not overly capable, but it would have been far better than just leaving her out on the streets. They knew Kiba needed blood to survive, so when they kicked her, they knew they were either condemning other people to get attacked by her so she could live, or they condemned their own daughter to die. Shoto Todoroki, what she said. It was really hard before I met Kiba. It's not that I felt lonely. It's that I felt nothing. And that feeling, of not feeling, is horrible. All I ever did was try to survive. But that lack of feeling made me kind of want to stop surviving. Fu explained. Oh God, I just thought about feeling nothing. I can't even comprehend what that would or I guess wouldn't feel like, and that is fucking terrifying. It's like thinking about not existing. You just can't. You know, I thought having Fu's quirk would be cool, but now. But when I met Kiba, she was just so, well, Kiba. She's just fun to be around, fun to watch. She finally made me feel things again. Fu explained. So we stayed with each other. Kiba would help me steal meat and I would give Kiba my blood. We were still homeless and had to endure all the things that went with it, but it was so much better than before. If only just because I actually wanted to survive again. And it was all thanks to Kiba. Which is why she means so much to me. Kiba meanwhile was faintly blushing from the sheer amount of genuine heartfelt praise Fu was giving her. She of course turned away from the camera in a bad attempt to hide it. Wholesome. Alien Queen, I can now die content. Invisible Girl, good because we now all have diabetes. Queen Crimson, so worth it. My teeth rotted away from all the sweetness and fell out, who needed them? Lady Kiba is blushing. But, eventually, we weren't able to get enough meat. So, I went on another meat rampage. Fu continued. But I got really lucky that day. Dad, Kay, and Eri were selling some homemade food in the park, and the hero Fatgum just happened to be there. I bit into him, but since he's Fatgum, it didn't do any damage, and Dad gave me all the meat he had nearby to get me back to normal. Which then let me give Kiba my blood. After that, Dad took us in. And we never had to steal or worry about starving again. And I'm forever thankful for that. Fu. Izuku couldn't help but also feel a little touched. Another happy ending. Thanks, caretaker. Feed dat hungry boy. With most of the backstories done, Izuku looked over to the last two. Sanson and Yonda. Do you two want to share or should we move on? It's okay if you don't. There's nothing wrong with that. After a few moments of contemplation, Sanson made a decision. When I was born, I acquied when we killed my mama. Because I'm weight of acid. And my birth daddy didn't want me. So he gave me to someone, but they didn't want me either. So they kept moving me around. Then, one day they asked me to go in a drawer, and they twacked me inside. I couldn't get it. Or move. Then he threw me into garbage on the beach. And I was there so SWO long. A whole year. Wait, what the fuck? Alien Queen, fucking kills me? She was trapped in a bottle for a whole fucking year? Winner. We have a winner for the most tragic backstory. Fuck this species. That is actually worse than prison. Netza shuddered at the idea. A whole year. In a jar. And you couldn't move. Many of the other children grimaced at the idea as well. But then Daddy freed me. And took me in like all the other kids. Sanson started moving around even more than usual, as if to show off her freedom, bouncing around everyone. Okay, so the order of most tragic backstories is Sanson at number 1. Kay at number 2. Fu at number 3. Lady Kiba at number 4. And the rest of them are pretty similar, so they can share number 5. That seems about right. So was Dadariya just going around finding small abandoned children and saying, "This is mine now"? Uravati, it's more like small abandoned children kept finding him and saying, "This is mine now." Izuku turned to Yonda. Yonda. You don't have to if you don't want to. Yonda had mixed feelings. On one hand, she didn't quite feel like sharing. On the other, literally, everyone else had already shared, and they had shared some pretty harsh past. Some worse than hers. She wanted to feel like she was part of the family. Father, you can tell them. Yonda knew that at the very least, she didn't need to be the one to explain it. All right. Izuku turned to the camera. Yonda was born to neglectful parents. They fed her and gave her a place to sleep, but they barely paid any attention to her. And never really loved her. However, little did they know. Yonda was born with her quirk. At first, everyone just thought she was deaf. Until she started speaking. And when she started speaking, that's when she also revealed that her father was cheating on her mother. After that, things took a downward turn. Her parents of course got divorced after the incident, and her mother became an alcoholic and started blaming her for the divorce. And what's worse, is that she could hear every thought going through their heads while this happened, and since she can hear thoughts through walls, it was just a never-ending hate and vitriol, with a lot of it aimed at her. You know, I always knew that being able to hear people's thoughts would be more trouble than it's worth, but this is like, worst-case scenario. Should there be a license to be parents? Because this is not okay. Earphones, oh god, it's like my quirk but worse. And constantly surrounded by people who hate me. Fortunately, her mother at least had the sense to hand her over to DOC. Izuku explained. And while that was better for her, it still wasn't great. Because the people who were taking care of her didn't like their jobs or her very much, and since she can hear thoughts, she could hear exactly how much they didn't like her. Yonda could remember all the cruel comments thrown her way by both her parents. Ruinous child. Life destroyer. Nosy bitch. Honestly, her time with DOC wasn't much better than before. Except she finally got to have a TV, and this was introduced to the concept of family. A real family. Something she had been robbed of and desperately wanted. Poor Yonda. Quirks that you can't turn off really are the worst. She heard Kei think. Can I set bad parents on fire? Is what Netsu was currently thinking. Which was concerning, but Yonda was confident that those thoughts wouldn't go anywhere. Similarly, Kiba was thinking as a hero. Can I rip bad parents apart? I wish I could make something that would symbolize family. Shiroku thought, which made Yonda smile a bit. She couldn't see what people were thinking, but she imagined that she was visualizing clothing designs. Sanson was currently bouncing around like a furious slime. Stupid. DOC. I'll melt M. Yonda would think that the abundance of violent thoughts among her family would be problematic. If she weren't touched that they were for her sake. I feel so bad that I feel nothing while listening to this. Wait, she can hear this. Sorry, Yonda. Muted emotions, and honestly, there are so many sad backstories I can't really feel anything but a bit of sympathy. Fu apologized. Yonda gave him a look that indicated that it was fine. She wasn't looking for pity anyway. Are you alright? She heard Otoko ask her. Yonda nodded, mustering up a smile at her big green friend. If you need to talk, then we can talk. Otoko reminded her. Alright, so that's everyone, Izuku said, before looking at the clock. And it seems that time's up too. It appears that question took up quite a bit of time. So I hope you were all satisfied with it. Kiba addressed her audience. It's already over. I didn't get to ask a question. I want more Kiba. Now. This will not be the last time such an event will transpire. And perhaps next time we will be joined by more of my wondrous family. Kiba said to placate the audience. Now, until next time, my minions. Chapter 44, Fuku steps out. A new face. Fukunoko was just having a normal day, minding her business while she read a nice book, with some small candies on the table in front of her. The sun was beaming through the window, and the only noise was the birds chirping outside. Overall, there was a nice, relaxing aura filling the room. And then someone knocked on her door, and all that comfort and relaxation immediately jumped out the window to make room for fear and paranoia. Who is it? Fuku hoped it was Eri or Kei or Mu. It's Izuku. May I come in? Izuku asked her from the other side of the door. The fear in Fuku subsided a bit. Her interactions with Izuku were limited. He would leave her alone for the most part, only really bothering her when he came to help her with quirk training. And she had generally gotten the impression that he wasn't somebody to be feared. But since Fuku was Fuku, she was still kinda afraid of him. Oh my god, what does he want? It's too early for quirk training. Maybe he's finally gotten sick of me and wants to kick me out. Fuku still wasn't super comfortable with Izuku, and so she wanted to say no, but at the same time, Izuku was the person in charge of this entire place. If I say no, what if he gets mad? Or what if he actually has something impotent to tell me, and if I don't listen I'll die? After weighing her options for a few seconds, Fuku decided it was better to just let him in. Come in. Izuku entered the room, holding a bag. Hi. Did you watch Kiba's Q&A stream? Aha. Fuku had made it a habit to frequently watch Kiba's streams. It was a great way to see more of what happened in the house, without actually leaving her room. Well, what did you think? Izuku asked her, taking a seat on the floor, a good distance away from her, as not to scare her too much. WLK Kai is less scary than I thought he was. His quirk makes him seem a lot worse than he really is. That Otoko boy too. Fukunoko admitted sheepishly. But I guess you could say the same thing about me. Izuku nodded. That's why it's important not to judge someone based on their quirk. You always have to remember. Quirks are just based on luck. No one chooses their quirk, but besides that, what else did you think? All those backstories were really sad. Fukunoko frowned as she remembered everyone talking about their past. She had actually teared up while watching that. Kei was always so happy and nice. How can she be so, herself? Izuku smiled a bit. Kei is just that kind of person. She's very strong-willed, and she's not willing to let things bring her down. No matter how bad they are. It's very impressive. Yeah, she's a lot stronger than me. Stupid Fuku can't even go outside. Fuku chastised herself. Hey, what have I said about comparing yourself to others? Izuku told her. It's unhealthy and unfair to myself, Fuku repeated what Izuku had told her previously. That's right. Most people would react like you do after experiencing that much trauma. Kei is a special case. Izuku explained. Eri was a lot like you when I first met her too. As she was? Fuku's eyes widened. But she's so nice and brave and kind. She's nothing like Fuku. She's gotten a lot better since then, but when I first met her, she never wanted to leave the house, Izuku explained, remembering the extremely early days of what one could consider his career, he supposes. And she would always stay by my side. Whenever someone else came to visit, she would always hide behind my leg because she was so scared of everything and everyone. Really? Fuku had always considered Eri to be like a ray of light. So to imagine that her light had once been so dim, it was hard to imagine, and honestly, Fuku didn't want to imagine it. Right. At first, I was concerned that it would take years to get her to where she is now. But then, Kei came into our lives. Izuku remembered the massive progress Eri made when Kei joined their family. And she helped change Eri massively. For the first time in her life, she had someone her age to play with and talk to. And she started coming out of her shell even faster. She even agreed to go outside more. And as more kids started coming and Eri started interacting with them more, she started getting braver and happier, until she became how she is today. Izuku took a moment to let that sink in, watching Fuku's expression of thoughtful wonder. I remember when she first told me about how she came to you and befriended you. I was so proud I actually cried. Izuku almost cried again, remembering just how happy and proud he was at that moment. But he could do that later. Now he needed to focus on Fukunoko. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Izuku asked her. Fuku thought about it for a moment, before giving her response. No. Sorry. You don't need to apologize, Izuku reassured her before moving on to his point. What I'm trying to say, being around others can improve your ability to be social. Yourself included, you've already gotten a lot better at talking to people thanks to Eri, Kei, and Mu. And I think you could get even better if you came out of your room and talked to people. Izuku saw Fuku's eyes widen in fear. It looked like he told her that she had some incurable disease. But he had anticipated this. And just as Fuku's mouth opened to shout some paranoid ravings, Izuku spoke first. Before you freak out, I'm not forcing you. Izuku clarified, somewhat calming her down, although she was still uneasy. It's just something I think would be good for you. Look. I know how hard it can be to face other people after being hurt all your life. Before I started taking care of Eri, I was practically dead to the world. Izuku put the bag on the floor and started rummaging through it. I got this idea from Kiba's Q&A. I wasn't ready to face the world again, so I decided to hide myself a bit. Fuku's eyes widened as she saw Izuku pull out a hoodie from the bag that was her size. The hoodie was mostly green, as it was modeled after a piranha plant. And the special feature of this hoodie was that it went over the face, obscuring it like a mask, with the head of the piranha plant being where the face would be. I thought that maybe this would help you, Izuku told her, handing the hoodie over to her. Fuku took time to admire the hoodie, looking over every bit of its design. It was not a secret that she liked carnivorous plants. At least not among the few people she talked to. She had told Eri about her love of these types of plants, and she even had a Venus flytrap she named Petey, after Petey Piranha, which looked to be the inspiration for the hood. It's amazing. Izuku smiled and let out a tense breath he was holding. I'm glad you like it. I asked Eri about things that you like and asked Shiroku to make them based on that. It took her a while. She said she wanted to get it perfect since it's her first gift to you. So I'm really glad you like it. Fuku kept looking at the hoodie, thinking about what Izuku had said earlier. Could I really do that? Would it be easier to talk to people if I covered my face? It actually seemed possible. At the very least, she was more willing to give it a try than just going out there with her face exposed. Although she was still very hesitant. I also got you another one in case that one gets dirty. Izuku pulled another hoodie out of the bag. This time it was bear-themed, being mostly brown like a teddy bear. That's so cute. Fuku swiftly took the second hoodie, admiring it with starry eyes. Again, I'm glad you like it. Izuku got up and made his way to the door. I'll let you think about what I told you, and if you want to do it. But just a tip, if you do want to go through with it, take Eri of K with you. They'll help you if you start to feel overwhelmed. And with that, Izuku exited her room, leaving Fuku to consider what he told her. She clutched the hoodie tightly, and brought it to her chest, as she made her decision. Stepping out. Shiroku was just relaxing in her room, watching some TV while eating a bowl of dead spider and human finger salad. And then there was a knock on the door. I wonder who that is. Shiroku thought as she swallowed down her food. Come in. The door opened, and in walked Eri and Kei, wearing gas masks. And behind them was. Shiroku's eyes widened as she saw a figure wearing the piranha plant hoodie she finished not too long ago. Fukunoko. Fuku clung to Kei and Eri's arms. Hi. Turns out, Izuku was right. It was like she was hiding, but not really. It was just something between her and the person she was talking to. An extra barrier that made her feel just a little bit better. Of course, that didn't mean she wasn't afraid. Oh no. Another Izuku had been right about was that bringing Eri and Kei was a good idea. Because if not, she wouldn't be able to move around because of how much her legs were shaking. It's not just because she was now talking to someone she was unfamiliar with, it was also because said person was half spider, and eating a bowl of spiders and human fingers. Shiroku noticed these obvious signs of fear and sighed disappointedly. It wasn't like she didn't expect it. While she was isolated for most of her life, the rude comments of the DOC workers were enough to tell her that she was quite scary looking. And the look she got while at the amusement park affirmed these suspicions. Combine that with the fact Fukunoko was just naturally afraid of everything, it was a miracle that she came to her at all. Her snacks didn't help. Hello Fuku. It's nice to finally meet you. Shiroku smiled gently at the girl and waved slowly, trying not to intimidate her. Hi, Fukunoko repeated, finding it hard to say anything else at the moment. There was a few seconds of awkward silence before the other two girls figured out they were going to need to assist in continuing the conversation. Fuku wanted to say something to you. About the hoodie. Kei prompted. She really likes it. So she wanted to say. Eri left the sentence unfinished, so that way Fuku could continue the rest. Thank you. Fuku managed to stutter out while bowing. Shiroku was a bit stunned by the suddenness of it all and Fuku's sloppy delivery, but she quickly regained her composure. You're welcome. I'm very glad you liked it. It's the first time I ever made something like that, and it took me a few attempts. So I wasn't sure how well I did. Fuku tried to think of something else to say, but everything was coming up blank. Well, looks like we're done here. Kei said, come on, let's go. Sorry Shiroku, Fuku can only take so much. Eri apologized politely. I understand. Good luck, Fuku. Shiroku waved goodbye as Eri and Kei brought her out of the room. One in the hall, Fuku started breathing heavily as she felt conflicted between relieved and afraid. On one hand, she has just talked with Shiroku. On the other, Shiroku was the first one she intended to talk to. There were still 8 more people she intended to talk to. Calm down, Fuku. You did it. Kei reassured her. Don't worry. You'll get better at talking to people, even if right now, you're a bit green. He. Fuku decided to ignore the pun and focus on the reassuring feeling of her friends/sisters next to her. Don't worry, Fuku, none of them are really scary, Eri said as they approached the training room. Kiba and Fu should be in here. Let's talk to them both at us so you can go back to your room sooner. They approached the doors to the training room, and Kei pressed the button to open the blast doors. And saw Kiba standing over Fu, whose upper half was missing, presumably from being punched off, and his lower half was shooting out of a fountain of blood all around. Kaiosei's tentacles were squirming out of Fu's torso stump, making the already nightmarish scene even worse. Kei immediately closed the door again, and just in time, as Fuku passed out from shock and fear almost as quickly, and her fear gas erupted, filling the area around them. Maybe we should take things a bit slower, Kei suggested. Yeah. Eri agreed as she looked around the gas-filled hallway. We should make sure no one comes up here and breathes this. Right. If that happened, they wouldn't have a real gas of a time. Kei punned. A grim pitch. Izuku made his way through the forest, towards the place where Yami asked him to go. He probably wants me to see some new grim. Izuku speculated. This was something that happened every now and then. Izuku had made a rule that if Yami wanted to make any new grim around the house, they would have to be approved by Izuku first, and Izuku would also say how much of one type of grim there could be around the house. Honestly, Izuku had been expecting this to happen sooner. Yami had gained a ton of negative energy from his little drive around the city. And while he had used a lot of it to make the grim for the UA exercise, apparently he had only barely used half of his negative energy storages. And so he had been doing a lot of experimenting with grim, even more than he had already been. Which Izuku found strange. When Yami first joined the family, he was very lazy. Which made sense. After living a life that was constantly about survival and vigilance, now that he could finally relax, it would make sense that he'd do it as much as possible. So when he suddenly started being more active and experimented with grim, it confused him a bit. Izuku reached an opening in the trees and found Yami there waiting for him. As well as 3 new grim. The first one was obviously based on an elephant. Mostly unarmored, except for a few spots on its body with some spiky bone armor, and a mask on its face. The second one was a giant ape. About 3 times the size of a gorilla, with various pieces of armors on its extremely muscled body, and of course a skull-like mask. The last one was a bit strange. It was a mostly black orb with some bits of white bone on its base, with strange spiky tentacles coming out of its bottom. Dad! Yami greeted. I have more grim. I see that. Izuku gazed at the new creations judgmentally. Already seeing various uses for each of them. Well, would you like to explain more about each one of them? Yami nodded eagerly and went over to the elephant-like one. Kiba calls this one the Goliath. I saw a video of an elephant shooting water out of its face. So I made one to water fires in the forest. Ah, very clever, Yami. Izuku praised him while getting a big smile on his face. Being located so close to a forest fires were a huge concern for him. And that was even before Netsu joined the family. I guess I could put a few pools of water around the forest and have these stand by them just in case. Izuku thought aloud. Alright, I guess we could have about 20 of these. Is that too much? Yami shook his head. Still have lots of energy. Get more every day. Alright, Izuku said sheepishly. It would probably take a lot to fully drain those reserves now, I guess. Yami nodded and moved on to the gorilla. This is a brinjal. Try to let Grim do more work, they don't have hands. This is big, strong, and has hands. Can grab things, lift things, and do a lot of work. And climbs very well. Izuku nodded as he quickly followed Yami's train of logic. Yeah, I remember you made these for the exercise at UA. I guess they could do a lot more outside of just combat. One would think having the ability to spawn a nearly endless amount of mindless minions would mean that manual labor shouldn't be a problem. And while the Grim did help quite a bit with that, there was one big issue they tended to run into. They had no hands. When it came to human achievements, their intelligence was often given all of the credit, and not enough attention was paid to the basic ability to grab things. Having 5 fingers was very, very important. Thumbs especially. It wasn't really something people tended to pay attention to, but trying to go about your day without using your thumb would swiftly prove this point. In summary, most Grim couldn't do a lot of different tasks, because of a lack of hands. These apes would be able to handle a lot of different tasks, although he doubted they could handle work that required a more gentle touch, given their massive hulking bodies. And of course, they also couldn't make any decisions that required any amount of brainpower. Meaning all the paperwork still fell squarely on Izuku's shoulders. And he was sure they could also make for good security if it ever came to that. Alright. I say about 4 of these should be necessary. Izuku judged. Only 4? Yami frowned. He'd have thought Izuku would have wanted more. They are a bit big to just have lying around the house, Izuku explained. Yami thought about what Izuku just told him, and then looked at the absolutely massive beast behind him. Okay. Without saying another word, Yami moved on to the orb Grim. This is a seer, Yami explained. I remember looking at cameras. So I made this. To exemplify what he was talking about, the seers glowed, and an image was displayed on the orb. Izuku stepped closer and looked into the orb. He saw Yami's room. It was like he was looking at a camera feed. They are connected. You can see what all of them see. And they can show you if something is wrong, and help you find things. Yami explained further. Izuku's eyes widened, as he realized exactly what Yami had made. It's like a bunch of sentient, floating security cameras. He was already imagining the possibilities with these. With the seers he would be able to have cameras all around the forest, looking over it and telling him if any disturbances or intruders were getting close to the house. He could also send them with the children whenever they left the house, so that way he would be alerted instantly if anything went wrong. There were so many things he could do with these. Yami, these are incredible. Izuku ecstatically praised his son. Honestly, I could do with at least 30 of these. He'd have 20 around the forest, 1 in his office, and 9 in reserve. Really? Yami looked at him with a bit of shock. Oh, is that too many? Izuku didn't know exactly how making Grim worked. He doubted anyone did except Yami himself. And while these seers look small, it's possible its abilities made it use up a lot of Yami's negative energy reserves. No. Fine. Yami honestly just didn't expect Izuku to be so excited about this specific Grim. In Yami's little boy's mind, while the ability to see everything going on around him was useful, the giant monsters were more useful. Then again, Izuku knew more than most people, so Yami just took it as Izuku seeing something he didn't. Alright. Is that everything you wanted to show me? Izuku asked him. Yami nodded. And looked towards the Grim. Where do you want them to go? Izuku looked at the dark monstrosities and tried to determine where exactly they would go. There's already so many different Grim in the house. At this point maybe I should build some kind of barracks. Part of Izuku liked the idea of having a barracks. It's basically meant he had his own private army to serve and protect the kids. Although another part of him just felt like he really shouldn't have a private army. But at this point, he might as well fully throw normalcy out the window. If the kids hadn't done that already. Well, we'll figure that out later. For now, we'll just keep them outside. Izuku told him. Except for the gorilla, he can stay in one of the empty rooms. Yami nodded and commanded his grim mental. The Goliath laid down, and the seer stayed where it was. But the Berinjal started moving towards them. Yami, what did you Izuku was startled, as the Berinjal picked up Izuku and Yami, and placed them on its back, before hustling towards the house. Why walk? Yami shrugged. Oh, okay. Just warn me next time. If Izuku wasn't so used to the Grim, then the sight of the giant gorilla coming to grab him would likely have sent him into shock. Yami nodded, giving no verbal response as per normal. There was a bit of silence until Izuku decided to ask something that had been on his mind for a while. What made you start experimenting with your quirk? Izuku asked him. You used to just like to lay around the house all day and sleep, so what made you start doing this? Yami shrugged. Got bored. Wanted to help more, you're very stressed. Izuku paused for a moment before sighing. He then picked up Yami, and laid him on his lap, before starting to pet his head. Thank you, Yami. You've been a lot of help. Now just take a break and let me handle the rest. Yami looked at Izuku's reassuring smile and all the negative emotions behind it. Part of him wanted to object, but he had stayed up pretty late, and the feeling of laying down on his father's lap while he stroked his hair was extremely soothing, and before he knew it, his eyes were closing and he was drifting off into a deep sleep. Izuku looked down at his son, with an expression of disappointment. He wasn't disappointed in Yami. Not at all, he was very proud that the boy was being so thoughtful and caring. No, the disappointment, as usual, was aimed at himself. Because he was struggling so much at his job, that his son felt the need to step in. If he had just done better, then Yami could just laze around and enjoy himself, rather than staying up late making monsters to help him. He'd just have to do better. And work harder. And then he broke into a coughing fit. After coughing into his hands for a few seconds, he felt something fly out of his mouth and hit his hand. He looked down into his hand and saw that a bit of blood had come out. Oh, Izuku said, his eyes wide with shock. That's not good. Chapter 45, New Hobbies. New Hobbies, Part 1. Netsu and Izuku were currently in the art room. For reasons Netsu wasn't entirely sure of. So Dad, why are we here? Netsu asked his father curiously. Well, I thought of something that could serve as a hobby, and as a way to help you control your quirk. Izuku walked over to a window, and picked up a painting that was set up against it, and then turned it around so Netsu could see what it was. It was a painting of a bird. Except it looked odd, not bad, in fact, it looked quite beautiful, but it was different from any painting Netsu had seen before, and he was kind of entranced by it. This was made, using fumage, Izuku explained, setting the painting on a stand nearby. It's an art technique using smoke from fire to create impressions on a paper. It's essentially painting with fire. Whoa! Netsu looked down at his hands, knowing under his gloves was fire. Capable of creating such art. Can I do that too? Of course, Izuku told him. That's what I brought you here for. Izuku had several canvases nearby, as well as several stands. And he had a fire extinguisher on standby. He was well aware of what was likely to happen. And he intended to be prepared. Now it's not going to be perfect, Izuku told him. It will probably take a lot of attempts before you can even make a painting. But the more you practice, and the better you control your quirk, the better the painting will be. Netsu nodded enthusiastically, and quickly ran up to the canvas, ready to start painting. Izuku was aware that fumage often employed more than just fire and smoke. But it's not like Netsu was gonna be creating a masterpiece anytime soon. So for now he would just work with his flames. How bad could this end up? A few attempts later. About as bad as Izuku thought it would go. The green-haired father was currently putting out the remains of Netsu's latest attempt with a fire extinguisher. Sorry, Dad. Netsu apologized, looking disappointed at his string of failures. I'm not very good at this. Not many people are good at things on their first try. And no one is perfect at anything on their first, second, or even third try. Izuku told his son. Do you want to be good at this? Yeah. Netsu nodded, a look of determination blazing in his eyes. Then you just have to keep trying, Izuku told him, setting down the fire extinguisher. Now, let's try another one. New Hobbies, Part 2. Archery? Fuku asked. It was another calm day for Fukunoko, and she and Kei were having a tea party. Yeah. Dad set up a bunch of targets outside, with bows and arrows too. Kei exclaimed. The arrows aren't pointy though. They have suction cups instead. So it's completely safe. Oh, okay. Fuku didn't know where this was going, but she didn't like it. Dad had almost everyone try it. But I missed out. The stuff is still there. And I want to try it, but I don't want to go alone. Kei lied. Can you go with me? In truth, Kei hadn't tried out archery with everyone else, because she wanted to do it with Fuku, and further, encourage her to come out of her room. And maybe try out something new. What? Fuku gasped. Why me? Because everyone else already tried it. And they don't want to go with me. Kei felt bad that she had to lie so much, but she didn't have a choice if she wanted Fuku to go with her. Please Fuku. Please. Kei pulled out her trump card. Puppy Snake Eyes. Gah! Fuku was taken aback, as many faces looking beggingly at her, all with teary eyes. No. That's not fair. How can snakes be so cute? Kei increased the pressure, wobbling her lower lip, and having her snakes move closer to Fuku while adding a teary sniffle for good measure. Fine, I'll do it. Fuku relented. Just stop looking at me like that. Kei's expression immediately brightened, and she went back to her bouncing, super happy self. Yes. But I have to wear my hoodie. Fuku amended. Deal. Kei smirked at her. Trust me, this is gonna be a hit. Sometime later, in the backyard. Fuku and Kei were standing in the omni-purpose court, where Izuku had indeed set up a bunch of targets, with some small bows and suction cup arrows. The walking chemical weapon girl was dressed in her bear-themed hoodie. Watching Kei take her bow and arrows. Why did you want to come with me? You'd be better going off alone than being with dumb Fuku. Don't say that. I love spending time with you. Kei reassured her. I'm glad we target to do this together. You're going to make archery puns the entire time, aren't you? Fuku honestly didn't mind Kei's puns and had honestly come to like them. But Kei had a habit of getting repetitive with her puns. If she had a drop of courage for every time she heard Kei make a rock or snake pun, then she would be Kiba. Bullseye. Kei giggled, giving Fuku a thumbs up. Now pick up a bow. What? Fuku recoiled back in shock. Why do I have to do it? Well, I can't just let you sit there and do nothing by yourself, Kei explained. Let's turn this archery into archery. It's okay. No one else is watching. Fuku looked around nervously, confirming that in fact, no one was watching her. Hesitantly, she walked next to Kei and picked up her own bow and arrows. Oh, I'm going to be awful at this. You don't know until you try. Kei chimed. Alright. Let's start. Kei quickly pulled back her bowstring, with Fuku tentatively following in suit. Okay, Fuku. Don't embarrass yourself. Focus. Fuku was nervous, her hands were shaking. Kei believed in her and she needed to try her best to succeed. She focused all her attention on the target. And everything else became an unfocused blur. She drowned out the world around her until all there was the target. Her hands stopped shaking, her breath calmed. They unleashed the arrows. And Kei's flew 2 feet before landing on the ground, not even reaching the target. Fuku's arrow, on the other hand, actually hit the target. It wasn't in the center, at all. In fact, it was more around the middle of the target, but it still hit. You hit it. Kei honestly didn't care so much for her own failure, as she was very willing to overlook that to celebrate her friend's success. No one could see it behind her hoodie, but Fuku was absolutely shocked. I hit it. I didn't get in the center. But I hit it. Yeah, you did even better than me. Kei raised her hand towards Fuku. High five. Fuku slowly raised her hand into Kei's. High five. How did it feel? Did you like it? Kei asked her quickly. It was fine, a bit calming actually, Fuku admitted. There was something about focusing on a single thing so intensely and letting everything else go that she found relaxing. Now let's do it again. Before Fuku could say anything, Kei pulled out another arrow and loaded it into her bow. Let's do this. W8. Fuku hastily pulled out another arrow and started lining up the shot. After a few moments, they released the arrows once more. Kei's arrow flew past the target, missing it completely. Fuku's arrow hit the target, but this time it hit the edge. A bit farther from where she wanted it to be. The lavender-haired girl frowned under her hoodie. I got worse. But you still hit it. Kei pointed out. I still haven't done that yet. You're doing way better than me. That's great. Fuku didn't respond, and instead, she just took out another arrow. This time, with more determination. A few attempts later. Kei and Fuku kept trying over and over again. The snake-haired girl had failed horribly every time. As it turns out, trying to do something that required a lot of accuracies while wearing something that made her sight significantly worse was a difficult task. So she had given up and decided to cheer on Fuku, who was doing significantly better than her. But not as good as she'd like. She had missed a few shots, but most of them had hit, and a few of them had even got close to the middle. But none of her shots were ever as close as her first one. And that frustrated the heck out of her. It wasn't just that she was, in her mind, failing, she was used to that. She was expecting that. But failing at something she had already succeeded at? She wouldn't stand for that. Why can't I do as well as before? Fuku pouted, stomping her foot and closing her eyes in frustration. And then when she opened her eyes, it came to her. Her hoodie was hindering her. Of course, if she had something in front of her eyes, she wouldn't do as well. Ignoring the fact that her hoodie was on when she did that first shot, Fuku would never even consider taking off her hood while outside, under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. She needed to at least do as well as the first shot. And she wasn't even thinking about the fact that she was outside. She unzipped the part of the hoodie that covered her face and pulled down her hood, exposing her head to the open air. Kei gasped at this, but Fuku wasn't listening. The world faded away until it was just her bow, and the target. She took out an arrow and loaded her bow. Focus, Fuku. Focus, she told herself. She took a few seconds to line up the shoot and hit. She had managed to get a bit closer to the center than even her first shot. Yes. Fuku jumped in the air in celebration, feeling a rush of satisfaction and accomplishment fill her. Great job, Fuku. Who? Kei cheered, jumping up and down and waving her hands around excitedly. Now try to hit the middle. Try and hit the middle. Right. Kei has never heard Fuku sound so fearless in her life. That girl had really gotten into this and was determined to hit the center. She loaded another arrow, focused and fired it. Failure. She hit the edge again. Repeat. Failure. She missed the target entirely. She was too excited. She calmed herself and repeated. Failure. She was closer but still not where she wanted to be. Repeat. Failure. Repeat. Failure. Repeat. Failure. Repat. Hit. Fuku had hit the edge of the center circle. It wasn't dead center, but it was still the center. I did it! Fuku said with a bit of disbelief before a look of sheer joy made its way onto her face. I did it! Kei ran over and glomped Fuku, enveloping her in a hug before the two started jumping up and down in celebration. You did it, you did it! The two celebrated their victory for about a minute. Until they heard a very familiar voice. Yes, yes, very good job indeed. Kei and Fuku froze and looked behind them and found that Kiba had arrived at some point and was smiling at them. So that's what you look like, Kiba commented, looking over Fuku's appearance. Your dash. Ah ha ha. Fuku immediately let go of Kei and started running away, while frantically putting their hoodie back over her face. Don't hurt me. Kei sighed and Kiba just stood there in stunned silence for a moment before saying, I just wanted to say she looked nice. Meanwhile, a good distance away, a seer laid in wait. Little did Kei or Fuku know, it had been there the entire time. Watching them, and broadcasting it all, straight to Izuku. Meanwhile, with Izuku. Archery, what do you know, Izuku said, turning away from the image that the seer had been broadcasting. Well, I'll need to learn more about that then. If Fuku found an interest she couldn't do in her room, then Izuku would need to do everything he could to encourage her. Because the key wasn't forcing Fuku out of her room, that would most likely end horribly, but it was making Fuku want to come out of her room. Which wasn't as hard as it sounded, because Fuku did want to go outside and socialize with people, it's just that her crippling fear of absolutely everything would often make her think she didn't want to. So he just needed to motivate her. I think Kei has earned a pudding cup tonight. Izuku smiled to himself. New Hobbies, Part 3. Kyoko was currently in the art room. Doing something Izuku had suggested to her, painting. She has so many memories stored in her head. Some were bad, most of them were bad actually. But there were some hidden gems in the rough. She had foggy memories of Eri being tossed into the air by her father, giggling happily. When Kiba first awakened her quirk and started running around at super speeds. And despite how much she despised All Might, she had to admit, internally, that the memory of seeing a hero rise from the flames with people on his back, smiling reassuringly, was inspiring. Izuku had told her if she was forced to carry on with all those memories, then she might as well focus on the brighter ones. Which is something she had taken to heart. And so here she was, currently trying to finger paint a picture of a child being tossed in the air by their father. With the child of course being her and the father being Izuku. The painting was, of course, pretty terrible, but what else could you expect from a 6-year-old? She had to use a stool just to reach the canvas. As she was painting, she heard the door open behind her. She turned around and saw Otoko enter the room with a small bonsai tree in his arms. Oh hello, Otoko. Kyoko greeted kindly. Otoko nodded at her and moved on. He grabbed a nearby table and moved it over, before placing the plant down on it and moving to one of the canvases, grabbing some paints and paintbrushes, and sitting down on a chair to start painting. Kyoko looked over to him, interested in what he was doing. After a few moments of watching him paint, she saw that he was painting the tree in front of him, which seemed pretty obvious now that she thought about it. It was pretty clear early on that Otoko's painting was also going to be terrible. But again, despite his appearance, he was in fact a child. And he did only just start painting. With her curiosity sated, Kyoko went back to her painting. And no sound rang out inside that room, except for the noise of paints hitting paper. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 9. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.